Council session is back in session. We finished number 8 on unfinished business. Number 9 is Ray Dawson carriages. Mr. Weaver's opinion. Motion to discuss.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Made and seconded. Mr. Weaver, you have the floor, sir.
You asked me at the last council meeting to look at this, to see what my opinion might be, and my opinion, honestly, probably is not going to make anybody happy. Frankly, looking at what came from the State Highway Department, looking at our material, listening to Mr. Dodson, who's contacted me twice about his point of view, going back and looking at the controversy as it has developed over the last several years, it's about as clear as mud. And I think that would correspond a lot to what the Highway Department had to say. The Highway Department seems to express or expresses that they will defend vigorously their right to say who may not use a highway. Our franchise ordinance, I believe, and I think Mr. Tharp gave me more credit than credit was due a while ago when this was developed. I think it was developed a lot by the carriage people, but I think it's a valid ordinance. But I think that given that the Highway Department's stance has been that they intend to vigorously defend their right to allow the highway to be freely used, is probably to invite a lawsuit between the city and the Highway Department if we try to enforce preventing carriages using that particular avenue. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't enforce it as to other laws within the city. We cannot, or we can enforce our requirements for business license, I believe. We can enforce if there are depots or areas where these carriages turn around that are not on the state highway. But to, at this time, try to stop the use of the highway would be not only to invite, I think it would invite a lawsuit or action by the state against the city. Although, honestly, that may be the appropriate thing to happen, because I think as controverted as the statutes appear to be on the state level, not necessarily on the city level, but on the state level, there may need to be a judicial determination. I don't think there's, though, a clear answer that I can say 100% or even 80% or this is the right thing. I think it's much more a close called issue. And unfortunately, that's what usually ends up in front of a judge. And so it may be a matter that can't be resolved at this table, or as an administrative part of the police department's enforcement of, or as even a controversy or a matter involving only the various carriage companies. It may be a matter that really honestly takes someone in a black robe sitting in the courtroom to decide. And it may be an issue that, if that doesn't resolve it permanently, ends up back in the state legislature, it seems. Because the state highway department has basically said, we're going to defend our right to use the highway, but you can regulate things that go on in the city. Well, how can you regulate what goes on in the city if we have no control over the highway? But we do have reduced right to that highway. We've always had reduced right to the highway. Anytime we want a curb cut or anything like that, or even put up certain signage, we've got to go to their authority and kowtow in certain instances to their ability to control what goes on. But they're saying, we're going to vigorously defend, but you can still regulate. The Where's that line go? It's a snake crawling across the path, guys, where the line is. It's pretty much somebody's guess. And right now I'm telling you to guess how a court would find. I don't think anyone could give you an accurate assessment.
Mr. DeVito?
Even though it's a state highway and it's still within the city limits, we have the ability to regulate vis-a-vis business licenses, collect taxes. This isn't like a limousine service where somebody's picking somebody up in another city and delivering them here. This business is conducted totally within the city limits of Eureka Springs. And I would assume that they would be subject to our business licensing and taxing and everything else that comes with operating within the city limits.
I concur that it would require meeting the obligations of the other city ordinances, including business license.
Ms. Bounce?
I forwarded to Mr. Weaver, an Attorney General, that, and while I'm not a legal professional, to my read, if I understood it correctly, it said that we can't regulate traffic on state highways, but we can regulate commerce within the city limits. We can't sell franchises, but we can grant franchises and charge a fee for them. So I keep going back to being able to regulate commerce within the city limits. We do have 3 carriage ride franchises. 2 are occupied, 1 is available. None of them are on the Highway 62 up there, none of them at all. So I'm going to have to go with the Attorney General's opinion that states that we can regulate commerce within the city limits, and that includes on highways and byways, city streets, alleys. That's the way I understood that Attorney General's opinion. And that's all.
Anybody else? Mr. Pano?
Highway 23, I believe, is a state highway, is it not?
Yes, sir. North and south.
The only concern that I would have is in reading Municipal League Attorney Mr. Schoen's opinion is we've granted 2 of the 3 franchises. We have a legitimate ordinance that may or may not be proper if I don't know, I haven't looked at a map of the 3 routes lately. I don't know what would happen if we took Highway 23 off as far as accessing the rest of the city, but we could definitely, other than Highway 23 and 62, determine, because according to Mr. Schoen, the city has the right to regulate horse-drawn carriages within the city limits. Arkansas Code 1454-1403 grants the city the power to regulate, and every description of carriages which may be kept for hire, it's a legitimate exercise of the city's police power, regulating public health, safety, and welfare, and the council further has the care, supervision, and control of public streets within the city. Accordingly, it is my opinion that the city has the authority to regulate the use of horse-drawn carriages on the public streets and may grant franchises. Based on his wording, and I've dealt with enough attorneys over the years in contract law that you can get an answer to any question that you want, depending on the way you ask the question. I think you could potentially look at the franchise routes and take Highway 23 off of the route and still have a defendable position that the franchises are legitimate. We have a franchise available, and to me, if I wanted to get my foot in the door, I would apply for it and go for it. I don't know if this is beyond the scope of the agenda item other than asking Mr. Weaver's opinion, but that's the way I see it.
Any further discussion? Mr. Weaver, you have anything to add?
I think what's been said by the various council members is correct.
in as far as it goes. I think our franchise ordinance is valid except for 23 being a state highway. And if the state intends to vigorously defend their control of that property or that use of that, it presents a problem to us in trying to stop the operation as long as the operation stays wholly on that state highway, unless we want to invite the wrath and potential of a lawsuit from the highway department.
Ms. Ballard?
In the interest of, I neglected to bring that piece of paperwork with me this evening, the Attorney General's opinion that indeed we may regulate commerce in town, including on highways, byways, etc. I forgot to bring that. So since we aren't all privy to that information, I would move to postpone this issue until our next meeting so that information can be distributed and everybody can draw their own conclusions from what it says. So I will move to postpone this issue until the next meeting.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Berry, you had your hand up.
Well, and it goes to, I guess, the motion that Ms. Balance made. I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, it seems like we've already accomplished. I mean, the item on the agenda was Mr. Weaver's opinion, and I think most of us received that same opinion from the Attorney General. The mayor,
I got them, I forwarded them to everybody.
the mayor
I'm sure everybody
forwarded
should have
them
what I
on
got.
to us, which is the same opinion, I'm assuming, that you're talking
I
about.
don't know, this one was from like 2005 or 2007.
It's still basically the same information, I believe.
I don't think
there's
it's ever
much.
changed.
I'm like you. For some reason, I didn't bring my information either. I thought I had it and didn't see it. But actually, I do have another opinion, and I don't see any reason to defer this for another meeting. I mean, I don't know what we're trying to accomplish. Number one, you heard what the opinion is from Mr. Weaver, and I think that's good enough, unless there's a question or a motion of action. Otherwise, we're just hearing the same stuff.
Well, if there's more information available, I mean, an opinion is an opinion is an opinion, and sometimes opinions don't agree with one another. So I was just offering that we might have some more information to peruse. That was my interest.
I'll withdraw my second.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Anybody
Moving
else?
right along.
Y'all had your hand up? Doc?
Yeah, what are we trying to do here? I don't know. Is he gonna, Mr. Dodson want to buy the franchise or release the franchise or get what he has to do to get in? I don't know what we're doing here. Everybody sent off all this information. We got it. Now we're arguing about it again. Let's do something about it. One way or the other, let's do something about this.
Okay. We don't have a motion or second on the floor, Mr.
Do we have an application for the third franchise?
Clerk?
Yes, you do.
I think until
Not for the
such time
third
that we have an
franchise.
application before the council that this ought to be,
I think
we got the opinion. I agree with Mr. Berry. We got the opinion.
Okay, let's just move on.
Mr. Weaver?
Move on.
I think your question may or may not have a correct answer to it. It's Mr. Dodson's position that he has an application. It is also his contention that he has applied for a business license and been refused a business license. I don't know that that is the topic that you have on your agenda tonight, but I would suggest you may want to ask Mr. Dodson if he believes he has an application and he's passed up.
That's our,
Well, it indicates that he did pay a fee, and that fee is apparently still being held by a clerk.
Mr. Mano?
for a question to the clerk, was that application not the one that was acted upon at the last, under the last council and denied? And can it be returned to close the issue on the last council's action on the application?
Go ahead.
The $350 was received 12/15/10 when Mary Jean Sell was the clerk. The franchise
12/15/10.
route that was, excuse me?
12/15/10.
Correct. The second franchise, the council decided that Mr. Tharp would have it. So, when Mr. Dodson was on his way to town, I asked the finance director to cut a check for $350 and offered to refund his money. He did not want it. There is a third franchise open. I am not interpreting this application as specifically for the open franchise. Perhaps Mr. Weaver sees it differently.
This franchise here that the gentleman's got here was the second franchise that they issued to Mr. Ford.
You might want to get him,
Yeah. Okay.
if they're willing to.
Go ahead.
The franchise that you got there was the franchise that they issued to Mr. Thorpe. Then I came back the next week and applied for the franchise that is the third franchise, which is here. Okay, the way the ordinance is set up is the carriage company sets out